This is the third Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
Welcome everybody to our second meeting in September. This is a regular scheduled City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 19, 2017. It is 6:02 p.m. I call this meeting to order, and as always, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so that citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Sandy, would you take roll also?
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Alan Keelan.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
10 present. We have a quorum.
Thanks, Sandy. Next is on the agenda is the consent agenda. These are items that are on the consent agenda where we'll make one motion and vote on that one motion for all of these items that are on there. You do have the opportunity at this time, council or staff, to move any item that you see on the consent agenda to the regular agenda where we would vote on that and have discussion on that on an individual basis. Is there anything under the consent agenda that council would like to see moved? If not, we're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Hackett, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, under the regular agenda, I just, we have no additional handouts. I'm just proposing that, I know most of the people in the audience are here for item 9A. So, well, I guess it would be 9A and 9B. I'm asking that we move those up right after the public input section of our meeting and right before the department head reports. If you're okay with that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hagan, second by Chestnut, that we approve the regular agenda with that one change in the lineup there. Actually, two changes, 9A and 9B. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, under non-agenda items and announcements, we have a presentation of a plaque to Rhonda Rollins for her 25 years of service to the city of Waupaca. And I know Rhonda's here tonight, right? And I'll turn this over to, come on up. Brendan, you want to come up too? And we'll bring her chieftain up here too. And of course this doesn't, oh, there, it does work.
I get to do the wonderful speech tonight, but this plaque is in commencing 25 years of work here at the city of Waupaca. I have been fortunate for just under 5 years now to work with Rhonda in this wonderful city, and she has been an asset to not only the department but to myself as being an outsider in the community and trying to understand the intricacies and different things that have occurred here. I'm appreciative on a day-to-day basis for having Rhonda in my department and working for the city of Waupaca. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Rhonda, thanks, yeah.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Right. Well, that's great. All right, let's move on then to public input. This is for the audience to be able to speak to the council on any non-agenda items. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the city council on an item that is not on our agenda tonight, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your time to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we will move on then to, and like I said, we're going to go to 9A. And this is a request from Russ Buckowitz and Kari Espesen to return the Oz Natural Area, which is a city park at this time, to them, who were the donors of this property back in, I think, 1998. And in your packet, council members, starting on page 117, you'll see a letter that Mr. Hart, our city attorney, has written to me and also to the city council. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Hart at this time.
The packet contains a lot of material concerning this subject, which I hope that you've all reviewed. There's a certain amount of history that's been provided by Mr. Butkowitz and Ms. Esbenson. It accurately portrays the better part of the last 15 years and the relationship they've had with the city of Waupaca. There isn't much to dispute in there particularly. There is a request dated September 13th from the donors, which is what I'll call them now, to return the Oz Natural Area to the donors for various reasons. I had the city council, there was a letter addressed to the city council dated August 10th, which basically was of the same nature. That request was updated by the letter dated September 13th, but the request is basically the same. At the request of Mayor Smith, I reviewed the materials and addressed these concerns. Basically, what has happened, without going over ancient history, is that the city and Mr. Butkowitz and Ms. Esbenson have come to an impasse as to what the future is of this property. We have met we've met a lot of meetings in the past 9-10 months, give or take, concerning what the future of this is to be. Henry and the mayor have requested the Esbensons to put together some type of a plan for the future, given that the city would intend to continue to try to maintain this property. They've made various attempts at that. We've had many meetings, and it has been clear to not only them but us that the city's attempts aren't what they envisioned to happen to this property. At this point, the city had attempted to comply with requests of various development of the property in line with the restrictive covenants. At various times, the city went afoul of those covenants and were advised by the management committee and the donors that some of the things that were done were inappropriate. Those things were removed or reversed, or any plans that were made for future were they didn't go through with those. At this point, there hasn't been any significant development of their property in the last year or two that would have come afoul of the restrictive covenants. I guess the only thing I can say about the future or the past of this whole thing is that apparently those restrictive covenants have worked. They were put in place to maintain the property in a certain state, and at this point I think that that has happened. And if there were some things in there that are a little different than the restrictive covenants, most of everything was approved by the management committee over the years. So what's there now is in line with these covenants, I believe. given that, the city has made an attempt to, first of all, when the city received a natural resources stewardship grant back in 1999, the DNR also placed a restriction on this property. And that restriction was that this property could not be sold, leased, or assigned to any other entity without the approval of the DNR. And that was basically because the city did receive a grant in the amount of about $52,000, and those funds were used in connection with the terms of the grant. It was determined that if the city wanted to turn this property back to the donors, they would have to go through a conversion process through the DNR and receive the approval of the DNR to get the conversion application approved and to substitute another like property for the project and for use of the stewardship funds in the future. I believe at this time that conversion process is complete or nearly complete, and it appears as if the city would be able to deed this property back to the donors without the restriction of the DNR. So here we are. There are a request by Mr. Butquist and Ms. Esbenson to return the property to them. The city certainly has the authority to do that. The city can continue with a park along the same veins in a different location and use the funds for various improvements in the future without having to be concerned about running afoul of any covenants or restrictions that were placed on them by the donor. The donors would get the property back and they could continue to improve their property or to do what they would care to do in the future. The property has changed somewhat in the last 15, 16 years because there has been work performed by the city of Waupaca on the property. There has been funds that have been spent there. There are various things that have been done to improve the property at the with the approval of the management committee, which did include the donors. And at this point, if the property was given back to them, they would get it back based on what it is today. I don't believe that the city has any obligation to try to attempt to return this property to the pristine state that it was in 20 years ago, only because of what's been done in the past is mostly irreversible. That's one of the options, is to return the property back to the Esbensons. I did indicate in my letter that they would then, if they got the property back, because they are the donors and the ones who created the covenants, would have the privilege of removing those covenants, and they could do whatever they wanted to with that property. This property has been appraised a recent value of $26,500 with the restrictive covenants on the property. If those restrictive covenants were removed, I'm not sure what the value of it would be, but there was an evaluation back in '98 which placed it at $105,000. So assuming that without the covenants on there, this would be a value somewhere in between, which would be to their benefit. They have made several demands in their letter as to what they would want to be compensated for, or what they would want done with the property. It's my opinion the city has no legal obligation to perform any of the requests that they have placed or considerations that they wish to be made, that if the city was to return the property, it would be returned as is, and that the donors then would provide releases for any claims they may have for the past 15 years regarding this property. And the city could then proceed to do whatever they wish with the property that they have substituted. The other alternative is the city could say, we're not giving the property back, and you have no legal obligation to do that. You could continue to own the property and maintain it, even though you may have gone through the conversion to release the restriction from the DNR. the city could continue to operate that as a park, subject to those restrictive covenants, which at this point would not be too difficult to meet, because I don't believe the city has any intention of doing much more improving out there, given the circumstances. If anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them, or possibly they would have to be directed at Brian. Yes.
Attorney Hart, with, I have a question on the restrictions, because the restrictions are not on the title, is what I'm understanding.
No, they are on the title. They are recorded in the courthouse, and they are effectively a restriction on the title.
They're listed one by one on them, then?
You have a copy of them.
Okay.
It shows
Yeah.
the volume and page where they're recorded in the courthouse, and if anyone was to purchase the property in the future, that would be of record. That's right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
There's this fund with money in it, apparently designated for the Oz property. What's the balance of that fund?
It's approximately $37,000.
Henry, with that money, with that $37,000, and I see at one point, if they're looking at the Barberry, could that money go towards that project of clearing that out or not?
I think the council can decide whatever you want to do. I would say that the DNR has no requirement that that money be spent on Oz, but the covenants did state it. So if the return is done, you know, there's no Oz Property Committee. It's back in the hands of the original owners. That money, council would ultimately have to decide what to do with that money. But we aren't fully through the conversion, and you know, there might be a need to not only put another piece of property, but some cash to meet the conversion requirements.
When will that be known?
Well, a little bit depending what happens tonight. But I double back with the DNR again, just to make sure that I'm understanding them. But there's really, think about this as kind of two actions. One is getting property back, but then also going to the DNR and going through a process to convert. Now, I have received a facsimile copy of a release of stewardship restrictions, I think, stewardship restrictions on the land. It's a document that it's going to be a hard copy in the mail, get it soon. And basically, if you decide to give the property back, or in John's scenario, the other scenario would be decide not to give it back, but you're going to still get rid of the stewardship restrictions, we can just do that they are releasing their stewardship requirements. But the other side of this, the other piece is, they've given us 3 years to complete the conversion, to make an application and complete it. So that process can go as quick or slow as we want it to go, and it's going to take a number of weeks to go through that process at best, I think. But they have at least done that piece, that those steward restrictions are off. So once that gets recorded, they're off. But we do have to ultimately put those steward restrictions on another piece of property that's of like value. Like value, like, you know, the biodiversity of the site, you know, the actual value of it, monetary value, and there's one other criteria. But that hasn't been determined yet. We haven't made that application, and whether the parcel we've identified possibly as a conversion piece will meet their requirements.
Henry, excuse me, the stewardship restrictions, that refers to not being able to sell it to a third party. That has nothing to do with the restrictive covenants. Right, those are two different things, just so we're clear. Okay.
Henry, the stewardship restrictions are released. That's a done deal, right?
Once it's, recorded. But
Okay,
yes,
but
but they've
you-
agreed to release the restrictions.
You have a fax
Yes,
with that, okay.
do have it.
And then we have 3 years to decide what to do with that money? Is that what you're saying?
No, 3 years to decide how we're going to replace the Oz property. We've got to find.
Right, well, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
we either got to find another piece of property, spend money on another piece of property and that might have stewardship restrictions on it, or a combination of both.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Henry, how would that then affect the foundation monies that are left, that 37,000?
Well, those funds
they-
are the city's, and I think, I don't want to speak for the parties and all this, but I believe we put it over in that foundation for peace of mind and to give the donors the feeling that those monies are set aside. It's under the Oz Natural Area Fund, and it's actually a city fund, a drawdown fund, that if you wanted to draw it down tomorrow, you could draw it down tomorrow with a request.
From the
council.
foundation?
It's a council from the foundation.
From the
It is
foundation.
it is the city's money.
The foundation is just holding the money.
Right, and
Okay.
investing it, and think about it, through these years, it started out at 52,500, it's at 37,000, and I gotta believe over $25,000 of money has been spent on Oz through the years. We've got every receipt, every penny accounted for from the foundation. So that it's been making a little money. It lost money as well in the downturn, but it did afford us the ability to have more funds available for Oz through the years.
When was the last meeting for the foundation or the group?
Is it 2015?
It's 2015.
Yeah.
Has money been spent since then?
You authorized me to spend $1,500 for that appraisal. Please
So
speak
that's-
into your mics, everyone, so that people can hear. Yes, you authorized me to do that a couple months ago.
Okay.
So that was paid out of that fund.
Good.
Yep.
Any other questions? Eric?
Yeah, I want to ask the question, if, let's just say we gave them everything they were asking for, what would the city be in for? What kind of dollars are we talking here? I mean, looking at, tearing up the limestone trail, bringing in topsoil, all the things that they're asking us to do, have these costs been looked at? I have no idea what kind of money we're looking at here to do something like that.
Well, they submitted invoicing and things. I don't,
No, but to tear it up.
to tear it up, I don't.
Aaron probably can.
Eric, we don't have exact numbers for tearing it up. I think that's something we thought we could absorb, that tearing up the limestone driveway and trails and restoring them was something that we felt that we could even do in our operational budget. It wasn't, that part is doable. So I don't have exact numbers for you, but that it's feasible.
Wasn't that limestone put over the top of topsoil?
Yeah, we'd probably till it up. We have all the equipment for all of it. We'd remove it, till it, restore it to the native grasses that are there.
All right, but we don't have any idea what kind of money all of this would take if we were to do it, right?
Correct.
It would not, but what Aaron did say to you, though, that part of it would not add any additional impact to the city budget. The staff would do that work when they had time to do that. Okay, so there wouldn't be dollars for that.
Okay, I got you. Yep.
All right. Any other questions?
But the dollars would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, let's try and make sure you direct them through me. I was a little loose in allowing this, but let's, just so we can keep an order to this. Paul, go ahead.
Henry, the stewardship restrictions, are we getting that? When would we have some idea as to if that would, if we decided to go that route, That's something that may or may not be approved. We wouldn't know until it's actually done.
No, the stewardship restrictions, they have signed off on them for Oz.
Okay.
So that is
Replacement
once,
property.
that's a unilateral, it's done, but they're doing it with the assumption the city's going to do the conversion ultimately, and they've given us a decent period of time, quite a workable time, because when Aaron and I spoke with the staff person there, we thought, you know, if there's some budgeting implications or try to get something in our capital budget, then we've got a couple years to plan for it. So if you, I think if you make any actions, is part of this is to release, that you would agree to release the restrictions, because then that drives the filing of that, the recording of that document. It's all as a part of releasing it, because then we've got to now go to the second step of actually applying for the conversion. And that, again, that could go quick. It may take us a year. I don't know. I don't know that that impacts the request here. I don't know that they care that it takes 2 or 3 years.
That's what I guess I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a further.
I think you can take action fairly quickly if you return it. We release the restrictions, and I think that can be all done pretty good. But I think the city attorney, if I heard him correctly, would want to reduce something in writing or have some kind of release as all part of this. So it's all clear what we're doing.
Mary, you had a...
So the monies that we would spend, if we chose to do that, would be basically for the removal of the invasive species. Invasive species. That's where we would spend money. That isn't something our, like Aaron's department would do.
Right, yeah, that would be outside of our department.
Right.
But that could be out of the fund or the foundation funding.
Lori, please.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, Mary.
Just trying to remind you.
Yeah.
Mary, are you finished?
I am, except,
You-
yeah, I
you
want to
can
hear
come
what Lori
back.
says.
Yeah, Scott had his hand up.
I'd just like to see if we can make sure we're clear on what we might be voting on here. They've made other demands here below the demand to return the property. Now, when we ultimately make the motion, we can make it however we want, right? We don't have to take this as a whole. Am I correct on that?
Yes,
Okay.
you are.
We could separate property return from these other demands. Is that correct?
You could give the property back without deciding on those requests.
Okay.
Correct. I don't know that the donors would accept the property back before those requests are taken up. I only get that from the gist of the letter, that while they call them other considerations, I think those considerations are important to them in the return. I could be misstating that. But I think that if you're going to give the property back, you have to take into consideration the fact that they're getting a property worth $26,000, yet they are also making a demand for other consideration in the amount of at least $26,000 from the city. I could be mistaken, but I don't believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that some of these requests would be appropriate to be used out of the stewardship fund. So if you are going to comply with those requests, you may be looking at city funds, not stewardship funds.
So, can I?
Well, I might
Hold
maybe want
on,
to...
let's finish that, because that's not my interpretation of it.
Well, yeah, I think the stewardship funds were given to us, and they came to the city's coffers because we paid $105,000 for that property. So there's no restrictions from the DNR standpoint. However, the restrictions that were placed on the property by the donors put that in there. But those are city funds. That's nothing that the DNR is going to be concerned with. So if you wanted to spend it out of there, you could, but does it make sense to, when you're giving property back that's no longer going to be a city asset? I think there's some reason to argue that maybe you shouldn't.
Okay, Lori was next, sorry.
So then you said the city paid $105,000?
And the grant paid us back half.
On the,
Henry, that's not exactly right. The property was donated to the city,
Parks Foundation.
Park Foundation. Then the city purchased it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't purchase it from
Right.
Waupaca and Esbenson. Right.
But-
They didn't give them any consideration. The consideration was between the city, Parks Foundation, and the city. And the grant was based on that appraisal, that dollar amount at that time, but there were no funds that went to the donors at that time. Right.
Hey, Laura, you done for now? Scott, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
So John, yes or no, we can make a motion to just return the property and not pay them any money?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I don't want it tied together.
And this is a question that I don't have any idea of, and I'm asking your opinion, Brian. What about consideration of our city residents as a whole of this park and their enjoyment of it? We've been talking about what if we return it, or how this or how that, but I haven't heard anything about if anyone has heard anything from our city residents as to whether they think it's a good idea to return a park that they would no longer be able to enjoy.
Are you trying to respond to his question, Laura?
No, I'm
Is that
just
what you're
asking.
tr- Yeah, are you asking me?
I'm asking you,
directly?
because you know more people in the city than I do.
Paul, I think that, while I didn't address that specifically, I did leave that option open that the city could just keep it.
I understand that, but I'm trying to get a feel of if anyone has and had constituents or other folks voice opinions as to if they think it's a good idea that our constituents would no longer be able to enjoy this property.
Mayor Smith?
I think, as you asked me this, I could tell you that it is a park, and it does get used. I can't tell you how many people do use it, and I think there will be some city residents that will not be able to use it anymore as a city park. But again, looking at their request, that's why it's in front of you, and you have that decision to make. I know I didn't exactly answer it, but again, it was a city park. It was being used. I've used it at times, to just go there. And so, and I'm sure other people have done that too. So, it has been used, and it will be missed. There's no doubt about it. Laura, you were next.
I did have 2 contacts that asked that the property please be returned to the family.
Okay. Mary?
There has been quite a bit of publication in the, there has been some publication in the newspaper, certainly in our minutes, and over the years, references made to the Oz property. And now in this controversial part of Oz's life, I've not had one call or one person say anything to me one way or the other of my constituents. I've seen quite a bit of commenting on Facebook that, but I've had no one come to me, and I don't know if any of the other alders have had any comments from people, but I have not. And I think maybe that's something that we should at least put in our consideration when we come to a vote, in reference to Paul's comments or question.
Scott, you had your hand up before again, or are you good? Alan?
I have received a comment from one constituent who supports returning the property also.
Okay. Eric, I'm sorry.
I've been on that trail many times over the years, and I love that trail. I'm going to be sad to see it go, but I've heard from several that want to give it back and I'm one of them that also wants to give it back. So I'll probably be the saddest person when I can't use it anymore, but that's fine. I think that we're doing the right thing, give this property back.
Dave?
I'm in with Mary's ward, and I did have one call that said give it back, just one negative. I do have another question. It's maybe getting the cart ahead of the horse here a little bit, but in the way of the expense of this noxious weed, whatever, does the city in any way at fault that that was there, or is it just comes in whether do we do something wrong that we should take the credit or the blame for that weed showing up, or does it just show up? Maybe you can't even stop it, like oak wilt or something. You can't stop it.
Aaron, can you answer that, or?
Sure. Yeah, as somebody who hunts on property, obviously manages other park properties, we have a lot of invasives that if you're not proactive and you don't have a maintenance plan for those right away and in our undeveloped areas, they're going to take over. I think it's not an uncommon thing for property around here. So, we have the same thing at Swan Park, back by the trails as well, where we've had invasives come into there.
Eric, I'm sorry.
I don't think the point is how it got there. I think the point that they're trying to make, and I may want to hear from them on this, but I think that we were responsible to get it out of there, correct? That was what this money should have been going for. So we kind of let it happen. This invasive species came in, we let it go, and it got worse and worse, and now it's to the point that it is now, where it's taking over, and we didn't get it out of there for whatever reason. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that pot of money definitely could have been spent on, and there was an effort to remove some of it at one point. And I haven't been involved in this back to the 90s, but that's how I understand it. It could have been the committee's priority to do more of that along the line. I suppose that's fair to say.
One more question. Okay, I want to just step back to, if, like in the letter from the family, it's like number 1, 2, 3, 4. Could we vote on accepting? I'm a little unclear about that. Could we say, well, could we introduce a motion accepting numbers of that agreement, or is it an all or nothing?
Kind of. What do you, go ahead, Al.
May I help clarify?
Yeah.
My understanding is we can vote on any number of those items.
Okay, that's what I wanted
depending on what the motion is. And to that end, I would like to make a motion then, that we return the Oz property to Dr. Butkowitz and Ms. Esbenson, including points number 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Second. I had those numbers written down.
Yeah, so did I.
Give me a page number so I can make sure.
122.
I can summarize those. We tear up the limestone trail, put in dirt.
Yeah, hold on a second. He's clarifying 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that he has made a motion on, and I have not recognized it yet, but I will. There's a motion to return the property to Mr. Butkowitz and Ms. Espenson, and to also on page 122 of your packet, the other considerations to include in that numbers 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that was seconded by Alderperson Olson. And we've asked for a clarification of Mr. Keelan's motion.
I was just summarizing the individual points. So 1 is the tearing up the limestone trail and bringing in native plants. Number, excuse me, 3 is the compensation to remove barberry. Number 4 is closure of the park during the transition period. Number 5 is to advertise the permanent closure of the park. And number 6 was to clearly denote the boundary of the River Ridge Trail.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion and the second? Any further discussion? Scott?
Okay, Al, where are you gonna get 10,500?
That'll come out of that fund.
Out of the fund.
But we'd have to vote on that again. We could turn that
That's
down.
part of the motion. Well,
Can you clarify that we would take the money out of?
take the money out of the fund, yes.
Okay.
If Eric,
Are you okay with that?
Yep.
And that would take care of that, Scott, then? This would come out of that money that's held by the foundation, but it's actually city monies.
And is there going to be, I mean, looking through these, there could be other costs associated, and all of those costs, if there are any other costs, which it looks like there will be, should come out of that fund as well.
correct. Well, other than Mr. Jensen did indicate that they would take it out, they would use their own staff and facilities
What
to
other
take care of the
costs?
limestone.
Looking at,
Item 7.
yeah, like, well, no, I wasn't. 7's not on as part of this motion. No, I was just looking at, we had to publicly, widely advertise permanent closure, so there's some stuff in the paper. I'm just looking at some of the transfer through signages, newspaper and other means. So there's some other costs built in there, right?
Are you okay with that, Alan? I mean, because there is going to be some costs, and I understand Eric's point. He wants to make sure that we know there's additional cost and that it could
Yes.
come out of that fund.
Yes, I agree, with the exception of number 1, which Aaron has already addressed, is using his staff to do.
Right. Okay. Well, and I'm sure they'll let us know what those costs are, and
Right.
they'll relay that information to us. And I don't know what it's gonna cost, but it's something that they can find out fairly quickly. Scott?
Okay, well then we should put a limit, because there's only so much money in that fund. I don't wanna expend city taxpayer money, on this. So if that fund is 37 something,
Okay.
that's the limit.
Okay, so Alan's saying, number 1, there is no funds that will be needed because we're gonna use city staff to do that.
Correct.
Number 3, will come out of that fund
Correct.
and go directly to, Mr. Buckowitz and Ms. Espesen. Number 4, closure of the park, I suppose we'll have to put up some signs, which will cost a few $100s to do that, maybe, and maybe put up some kind of fencing or whatever to do that. So that's pretty minimal. Number 5, advertise, and we'll have to look at the best way to advertise. Obviously, it seems the best place to advertise is Facebook. And then number 6 is just making sure that we update all of our literature to show that the Oz property is no longer part of our River Ridge Trail, basically. And there might be some costs there. Do we do any paper brochures and stuff like that?
We do, and I would add to that, that we would likely properly sign the top of the hill there, because I think that's maybe where we're having some problems, people entering it, not knowing it's closed if somebody rips down the fence or whatever it might be. So just clearly marking it up by the water tower up there.
Okay. All right. So again, I think the amounts that you're talking about, Scott, are pretty diminutive to what we're talking about, and I'd hate to be stuck on trying to put a dollar amount on there and we're off.
I'd have another question on that, though.
Okay.
Microphone, please, Scott. Use your microphone.
Regarding number 3, you just said we would turn over monies to Kari and Russ. I would think if they hire a company to do that, we'd need qualified receipts saying that somebody actually was doing labor and not just turning over a check. Yes? Al?
I'm thinking that should be a not to exceed amount, since they did obtain a bid on that.
Could you say not to exceed on number 3?
Yes,
10.5?
10.5.
But what I'm,
And those would be not paid directly to Russ and Kari, but they would actually be paid to whoever
yes, that's what I'm
removes
asking.
the Barbary.
Contractor.
That's what Scott's
That's what
asking.
I'm asking.
Yeah, there's a
Correct.
bid right here on the thing. It says Rhinish Forestry. We could pay,
Okay.
if they do the work,
Okay,
Okay,
that to them.
all right, so I stand
Right.
corrected.
all right.
Sorry. Paul?
Okay, what am I missing here? We have 6,000 some residents in the city of Waupaca that we are elected to represent. Have we heard from those people? We've heard a lot from people who want to have this returned, but I don't know that we have properly heard from our constituents as to whether they want this to happen or not. I haven't. Has there been proper amount of time for people to respond, the general electorate, to respond to the possibility of this park being closed? And I don't feel comfortable until there's been proper time. Obviously in the newspaper, this will be out there, till we've had proper time from the other side to respond. We've heard a lot from people who want this park closed, but I don't know that I've heard enough from, another opinion.
It was in the paper.
It was in the paper.
Okay.
Front page.
Well, I think,
Right.
go ahead.
Well, it hasn't been open for a long time. I think if anybody had an issue with it, they would have brought it up already. I don't know that, I know it's been at least a year, maybe longer.
He's talking about the River Ridge Trail now. You're talking about the River Ridge Trail. The
No.
park has always been open. The park is open right now, but the River Ridge Trail
But
is
yeah, yeah,
closed.
Which is
Right.
part of that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
But no, yeah.
So you're talking about the River Ridge Trail that goes through the Osborne.
Which is, I think most people, if they're gonna use it, that's what I used it for.
Sure. I think it's been more than a year, but yeah, Dave.
And another response to that would be, if we do indeed go ahead and make the conversion, new conversion plot could be used as a park, possibly, depends on where it is.
Years from now.
Yes, I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, Paul, council is going to have to decide if they have enough information. And I get it, I understand where you're coming from, and it's not an easy decision, and it isn't easy for anybody that's in here, So when you make this vote, you have to really decide if this is what's best for the city, as well as the residents of the city. And if you do believe this is what's best for the city, then you would vote in favor of it. Eric?
Would it be out of line to ask the donors to speak and before we vote, just to see what their pulse is on this motion?
You have every opportunity to ask them if you want to, but I would ask that it would be specific to your question only. And so if you'd like them to talk.
Do you want to talk? Or understand the motion? Well, I don't want you walking away completely disappointed. I think we're finding.
We can't have this discussion without you deciding whether you want to talk or not talk, because we are on TV and we want to make sure that everybody.
If we talk, I just want to be clear what the question is, if you want us to address.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk, or let's.
Here, why don't you go up to the mic? I just want to make sure you understand the motion and what we're voting on.
Yes, I think I do understand the motion.
And where's your heart in what you're hearing?
Well, I appreciate that the council's willing to consider returning the land to us. And I do appreciate that the barberry removal. I guess what I would like to do is I'd like to say to the council, to sort of echo some of the stuff that Aaron had said as far as the barberry goes, that
You know, there hasn't been a management plan in place for the city.
Russ, excuse me. The motion does include the removal of the barberry. Okay? So we don't need to rediscuss that. They've agreed to pay for the removal of the barberry.
To Attorney Hart's point about the value of the property, the value of the property, it was assessed or appraised at $105,000 back in 1998. I believe that was appraised without the covenants being in place, even though covenants were in place at the time. If that property were returned to us at what the current value is, I want to have some questions about why the property has degraded so much during that the time that the city has possessed it. But secondly, if we took the property back and we took the covenants off, which is not our intention, our intention is to keep that as a natural area, we would be no further ahead. It's not like we're going to make money off of this, and I just want to make sure that council understands that's not what this is about. You know, that this has been about a difficult relationship all the way around, and part of this is to hope to resolve that. So.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that I have no problems with you guys paying directly for the barberry removal. Again, this isn't a big money-making scheme for us, and so that's not a problem. That way, our concern is getting rid of the barberry. And I do want to echo the perspective that early intervention with barberry removal is really critical. We wish, on several occasions we brought up the issue with the committee.
Again, Kari, as I said to Russ, the barberry is in the motion to be removed.
Right.
So I guess, quite honestly, the council is admitting guilt that we should have done something about the barberry.
Okay. So what I also would like to speak to as part of the motion is, I'm disappointed that there's no recognition of the expense accrued to us. We spent $5,600 on an attorney simply to have an open records request answered. We, as you know from the packet, we had concerns about the management of the money and violations of restrictive covenants. We made multiple requests for access to financial records under the open records law, and also per the fact that we were to be in a management committee that would authorize any expenditures. And during the period between when we donated it and 2004, there appeared to have been some expenditures of those funds. Okay, I don't want to dwell on that, but what troubles me is what is being offered is not recognizing the pain and suffering and the thousands of hours, and I'll say most of them came out of my side, pursuing records that we were legally entitled to, okay? Including records that exist with First American Title Company right now that explain why the restrictive covenants were not in the title insurance policy. I don't want to dwell on it, but I want to say that it's a disappointment that that's not also being recognized. When we made this proposal, we were conservative in the amount of time that it's taken to defend this property, whether it was a defense of trying to keep the city from building an education center there that would have violated the covenants as well as the terms of the DNR encumbrance, or whether it was to get a sign up there, or whether it was to get wetland fill out of the wetland, or whether it was to get monies restored that may have been spent. I don't want to dwell on all those things, but nobody is recognizing that tonight. And that's a disappointment because citizens should not have to hire an attorney to have open records answered. Okay? We should not have to hire an attorney to have open records requests answered. And that's a disappointment for me. My husband and I will have to talk about things. You guys will have to do what you feel is ethically and morally right. Understanding that those monies were supposed to be used for maintenance of that property. I feel that the city's done a great job mowing the lawn out there, and picking up garbage and all of that. They blocked off the fencing. But most of the defense of that property has been from us. We have defended it as stalwart stewards. We are the ones that just had a forest management plan developed for that through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The city never initiated that in 20 years to have a management plan for a park that they've held that long, okay? We took the onus and had that done. One of the recommendations in that is to remove the invasives. So this is a disappointment to me. I don't feel that it fully recognizes the pain and the suffering that we went through. And I do want to say that Mr. Ellison said this is a sad day for him. This is a sad This is a sad day for me. This is not what we wanted to have happen. We actually tried to have the property when things were not going well in city management to have it transferred to one of the two area land trusts. And also the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. Well, you were asking me to comment on the ward, so I just would like to be able to comment on that.
Hold on. We have put everything that you're talking about in our packet tonight. And I understand that you're hurt, and I understand why you're hurt, and I feel bad. But what the council's trying to do is fix this the best they can do. And I'm sorry that you have had to go through this, and I'm sorry that you're going through this tonight. I feel bad. I don't ever want to see anybody get hurt in this process, whether you believe it or not. I don't want anybody to do that. I think what council did by making a motion, and we have not even voted on it yet, so we don't know what the outcome of that vote is, but from listening to the discussion, Mr. Hagan has said, we're not even sure what the other citizens think, but council has had the ability to make a motion and a second tonight to return that property to you because that's what your wishes are. And that's what we're trying to do here tonight. So we're trying to make this bad situation as good as we can. And sometimes when neither side wins, both sides win. And I know that doesn't sound like it's going to satisfy you, but if you really think about it, that might be the truest answer that you have to look at when we're all said and done with this. So,
I would just like to say I appreciate your heartfelt expression, and that means a lot to me, Mayor. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Paul, go ahead.
I have one last question that I have to ask. Is there, even at this time, is there any pathway in which this can be resolved other than returning the park to the donors? And any opinion on that?
Well, again, you could probably start with the guys that made the motion by asking them, or are you asking somebody specifically?
I'm asking both of them, and I'm asking council members, is there any pathway in which this does not have to be done? Is there any obviously I'm coming a little late into this process because I was on vacation, but is there anything, any resolution to this other than returning the property?
I think the history of the city's performance in guardianship or oversee of this property has been pretty bad, and I don't think that would change. I can't believe that we could structure anything that would have us performing any better than we have in the last 20 years. That's my assessment, based on what I've seen in history. The intent of my motion was to address those points regarding closure and transfer of the property back. As far as pain and suffering damages, I would leave that for somebody else's motion. I intentionally excluded that because I wanted to try to get as clean-cut a motion out there as we could vote on and reasonably vote on tonight.
Well, and I think the reason I voted the same way that you did is because I don't think it would pass if we threw everything in there. I don't think council would pass that. So I think this is the best motion we can have that has a chance of passing.
Attorney Hart, American Attorney Hart, looking at that compensation amount, civilly, if it was, could that be a civil matter, or is that not a civil matter, or how does this all, because if it's not in the motion?
It's my opinion that that amount that they're claiming for attorney's fees, expenses, etc., the city has no legal obligation at this time to pay it.
Okay. Looking back at the fund again, are any of those items in there, could that come out of the foundation funding?
Well, like I said, there's no legal obligation to pay those things. These people were initially part of the management committee as a volunteer. And as volunteers and part of the management committee, they made overtures to the city about the management of it and what the city was doing wrong. And it's my opinion that they were volunteering that time as management committee members, just like everybody else. And yet, they are totaling up expenses, some of it over 2 years old, all of it almost over 2 years old, that says, oh, we should have got paid for that. They had no contract with the city as a volunteer on the management committee. They have made no notice of claim to the city, which is required under state law. And on that basis, the city has no obligation to pay those legal fees and related expenses. If there ever was a basis for it, it is long past the time for them to make that claim legally.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm looking, I'm not seeing any. Okay, again, the motion is to return the property to the donors, Russ Buckowitz and Kari Espeson, and to include numbers 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which are on page 122?
Yes.
122 of the packet. And they would release that money as for the evasive removal as the work is done to the contractor. Okay? Hearing no other discussion, Sandy will call the roll.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Paul Hagan. Mary Fair.
Aye.
And Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, before we move on to B, which actually has to do with the same property, are there any other motions concerning the request or the under 9A? Are there any other motions under 9A? Hearing none, we'll move on to 9B, which is a decision to detach the Oz Natural Area property from the Waupaca city limits. And I got John Hart's and Henry's name both on this. So, John, you want to start with that?
Sure. Generally speaking, as soon as there is an owner to this property that would not be the city, that owner can circulate a petition of intention. First of all, within 120 days after publication of an intention to circulate a petition of detachment, a petition can be filed with the council to detach the property. So first of all, they have to publish a intent to circulate, and then they have to present a petition to the council, and then the council has to act on an ordinance to detach that property. Within 60 days after that, if that petition is granted, it has to be accepted by the accepting municipality, in this case the town of Waupaca. In either case, if the city votes on it, there has to be a 3/4 vote of the council to detach, and the town also has to have a 3/4 vote to accept the property. The zoning that is currently on the property would continue with the detachment and attachment, and then future zoning could be then taken up by the new governing body to set the zoning. However, it would be requested by the petitioners at that time, but that would be a town matter. So basically, we have to pass an ordinance once the preliminary intention is circulated and published, and a petition is presented to the council.
So, John, that brings up a good point. Once the property, if they agree to this and the property is returned to them,
they have to do it.
Yeah, but what is it zoned until?
Zoning doesn't change.
So it would still be
What's the zoning now?
recreation,
No, the zoning right now, I believe, is actually I-2 on the property.
industrial? Okay. Okay. So we're having this discussion. Henry, any other comments on this? We're having this discussion tonight because if the owners of the property, if they accept the property back, have indicated that they're interested in detaching the property from the city of Waupaca and putting it back into the town of Waupaca where it was before they donated the property to us. Now, we don't know for sure that they're going to do that, but if they do, I guess it's more for your information that they would request that. I don't know that you really need to make a response tonight on whether you're in favor of allowing that detachment or not. But as John has said again, so we remember, it would take 8 votes of the city council if we have 10 people present to approve that request for their detachment, and then it would go to the township to decide whether they would accept it or not. And I think it's probably more for zoning purposes than anything else that they would like to probably see it detached. So, any questions on this?
So if they don't accept the property back, then is that what's Brennan then saying, the zoning would change? No, what were you talking about, industrial? So these,
I'm double checking right now, but I believe the current zoning on the property is industrial.
oh, okay.
So it's never been
Mayor, in
reasonable?
either case, once they get the property back, if they decide they're not going to have it detached, they can have the zoning changed if they make proper application.
But they would have to make
They
an
would do it
application.
with the city.
Right.
If it goes to the town, it goes under the current zoning, and then they make the change at the town level.
Okay.
So either way, they can change the zoning if they care to, or if the city will allow them to upon proper petition, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we needed clarification. That was more of anything.
Yep.
Anything else on B? Again, we haven't actually got a formal request for them to detach yet, so we'll have to wait for that. And then once we receive that, if and when we receive that, then we would act on it at the earliest possible opportunity to do that. Anything else with with 9A or 9B? Okay, I think we're done with those two issues. We're actually back to department heads and reports, and I'm going to ask for about a 8-minute recess here. So we're going to take an 8-minute recess, and then we're going to start up right at 20 after 7. Okay, so let's make sure that we're ready and in our seats at 20 after 7. Thanks, everybody. Back into session here. I call this
Okay, where are we at here?
council meeting back in session, and you can say no, but I'm asking one more change if you don't mind, and I know you already approved the agenda, but I don't think you'll be too concerned. If we could just go ahead and do 9C. I know Terry Schultz is in the audience, and although she would love to hear what the department heads have to say, she would ask that we, or I had suggested that we go ahead and do this one.
Do you need a motion on that?
I do.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that we approve the temporary Class B license for the Sud Shuffle Beer Walk event on Saturday, October 14, 2017. And this is a request of the Waupaca Area Chamber. Any discussion? Terry, do you want to give any hype to it at all, or are you okay with just us approving it? Okay. Thank you. All right.
We need to have a vote on the change of the agenda.
That was my motion, I'm sorry. I was making the motion to change the agenda
Oh.
and move 9C up.
And I
Okay.
seconded that.
All right. Sorry about that. I misunderstood you. I thought I could just arbitrarily do that, but okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the change of the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right, now we have the temporary Class B license for the Sud Shuffle Beer Walk event.
Make a motion, we accept the application for the temporary or give it to them or whatever. However you want to do that.
Okay.
Second.
Whitman, motion by Whitman, second by Keelan, that we approve of the temporary Class B license for the Sud Shuffle Beer Walk event on Saturday, October 14th, 2017. You just wanted to see how many times I could say that without screwing up, right? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Can we ask Carrie a question before she leaves?
Sure can. She's going to have to use the microphone, though.
When I look at all my $100 bills, how will I know if it's counterfeit or not? Because you said, I understood on the radio, it said, you look at them before you accept them. Oh, well, wait a minute, what would I know?
Well, if you have the new $100 bills, there are a number of indicators. If you look at it up through the light,
I always do that, of course.
there are indicators. The biggest one is there's like a ribbon that runs through it that's multicolored, and that would not be there if it was counterfeit. But there's also two different heads, and if you actually go to the Department of Treasury, they actually have, for each new bill, they have a whole list of what you can look at to detect whether or not it's counterfeit. So the old ones, you would probably need to use the counterfeit pen. However, that doesn't always work because sometimes counterfeit bills, they'll actually use a dollar bill and make it into a $100 bill. So the counterfeit pen is actually detecting the paper, not actually the amount of the bill. So
Now I know how to.
now you know how to counterfeit.
What does it cost for one of those little magic markers that you could carry around with you all
Yeah.
night? Yeah.
Don't know, but I'm sure you can get them at Office Outfitters.
Right? Obviously a chamber member.
Obviously.
All my hundreds are better shape now.
Did we vote?
Yes, we
Did we vote? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, thanks a lot.
Make sure you buy a ticket and join in on the Sud Shuffle.
$15.
All right, let's go backwards then to 7C, which is the department head reports, and Kathy's been working very, very hard here, so I think she's going to tell us a lot tonight.
I'm working on the 2018 budget. I've received notification from the state that our shared revenue is going down about, I think it said it was about $3,600. Mostly it's because of the expenditure restraint program. I'm sure that more people have, municipalities have qualified, so that's, pot of money has not changed in the budget, in the state budget, so that has to go a little bit farther. We did receive insurance renewals, the 3% on the health insurance is very, very good, with no plan changes. There are municipalities out there that are getting double-digit increases in health insurance. We also did get a 2% increase in our dental insurance, but that is a voluntary employee benefit that they either opt in or opt out to take. We still have an employee on workers' comp and light duty in public works. Our new secure drop box has been installed in the parking lot, and we are working with the design team to make sure that there remains a drop box in the parking lot. And I did attend the software training session last week in the Dells and have come back with some shortcuts for my staff to better utilize the software. And I'm going to another conference this week in Appleton for the human resources and find out where everybody is thinking of where health insurance is going after Obamacare. But I have been working on the budget, and I believe when we do the committee of the whole at the next council meeting, after the next council meeting, I will have some good news depending on what the departments give me on Friday with their requests. But we're getting close. So thank you.
Good. Any questions, comments for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy. Library, Peg?
Thanks, Mayor Smith. I too have been working on the 2018 budget with Kathy's help, and we will get there. I'm sure that we will. We have some exciting news at the library tomorrow. Our self-check machines will be installed, one in each department, adult, children's, and teen. So we're looking forward to having people be able to help themselves to their library materials. It does provide some privacy for you, and sometimes it means shorter lines. We're also looking forward to a visit from a teen author. Her name is Asia Mayrock, and she has written a book called The Survivor's Guide to Bullying. And through the library's efforts, she is coming and will be giving a presentation to all of the middle school students, as well as having an evening program for anyone who wants to attend. So we're really excited. We think that really matches up well with the Waupaca way and the ideas that we've been putting forward about being respectful, and responsible, safe, and prepared. In addition to that, we are having our Food for Fines, a food drive for the food pantry next week starting September 25th, and it will go through the 7th of October. So bring in canned goods in lieu of paying your overdue fees, and we can waive those for you. And this is the last week for the Great Lakes Small Streams exhibit. We will be having an art exhibit from seniors at the Senior Center, working with Marie App, the artist, next month. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Peg or comments? Thank you. Brennan, Economic Development.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. My report's on page 66. Just to follow up on the permit you just approved. So the Sud Shuffle is going to be on October 14th. It's the fall Sud Shuffle. We have partnered with the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce. There will be 13 businesses that'll be having a wide variety of fall and harvest type of beers, Oktoberfest and some pumpkin beers out there. So more information will be out as of tomorrow. So I definitely hope that everyone can come out and attend that. I'm happy to announce that my department's fully back to staff. We did make an offer and have an accepted offer with Elizabeth Holsworth for our code compliance officer. She is a reserve deputy with the Waupaca Sheriff's Department, but she comes to us. She grew up in the Appleton area, actually went to school at Marquette for to be actually a police officer, but has changed careers a little bit and decided that would rather work in this field a little bit better. So we're happy to have her aboard. This is her first week on the job, and been driving her around and getting everything situated. I will bring her to a meeting in the future. And just an update on a couple of the projects that we have going on in town right now. The Plan Commission did approve the downtown B7 district for some residential on the first floor. That'll be coming forward to the council here next month for consideration for first and second reading. And to date, the city has not heard back from WEDC on our amendment request for Dock Addy. So we are still waiting on that before we can move forward with the developers agreement.
Great. Any questions, comments for Brennan? All right, Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. My report follows Brennan's on page 68 and 69. Starting on our wastewater side, our Kiwanis lift station, which is our oldest one, had a pump failure. That pump's about 7 years old. So instead of looking to rehab that, we're looking to replace it. So we're considering a emergency purchase. And the pump motor combination will be about $10,000, but something we need to have at these lift stations to stay reliable. Lake Street is in full swing, in case you haven't noticed, and things are going well. Contractor's pretty much on schedule. Water main's a little bit behind, just a couple days, but we'll make it up in the long run. And concrete crew is scheduled in about a week and a half, and it should be paved up. So we're still on track for early to mid-October. We've had a couple changes with the construction that have actually created some savings. We had several sewer laterals that need to be fixed, and we asked the contractor out there to give us a price. Well, we saw it as too high, so now our crew did it with conjunction of Fulks Brothers, saved about $2,000 per lateral, so a big savings there. Did a change order. Also, instead of bringing in new base material from Fulks Brothers, we ground up the existing pavement and we'll use half of that for the roadway base. That there will save us about $7,000 to $8,000 as well. So all in all, about $10,000 of savings just with a few minor tweaks. Probably the biggest news is the announcement of Randy Abrahamson's resignation after 36 plus years of service to the city of Waupaca. His last day will be the last day of September. What the heck is that? September, 29th on Friday. So he will be missed over this winter. So I guess moving forward into snow season, we're going to look to promote from within. He was our crew leader. We're not going to fill that position right away, but probably promote one of our younger guys to take on a little more responsibility and try to bring us back up to speed a little bit. So we're working on Evans Street. I know I kind of mentioned that at the capital planning as being on the radar. So we're doing some preliminary studying on that and trying to set up some public meetings to figure out what's the best fit for our community and that road in the future. So that's will be on the future radar as well. Water utilities pretty much been tied up on Lake Street, but the hydrant flushing is coming up soon. They have that scheduled for October 1st through the 13th with the schedule, and we'll make sure to put that in newsletter and advertise that like we usually do. And finally, the emerald ash borer has been found in Waupaca County. We had a plan in place. Actually, it's been in place for quite a long time in just preparation of this day, I guess. So moving forward, we're going to be just a little more aggressive on our removals, the street department that is. Russ is working with Mr. Jensen here to go around and look at the park, see what the impact's going to be there. Maybe take down a few trees, be proactive on that, but also treat some trees to try and save some of the nicer ones as well.
Justin, I just asked you this a couple of days ago, but just get the council up to speed on the street light removal and where we're at with that.
Yeah, the street lights are pretty much all gone. I think the last area was the Foxfire Court area. I did not double check to see if they were actually gone, but I know they had a locate in, and that was pretty much the last spot. So the bills are definitely showing it each month. The last 5-6 months, we definitely seen a reduction, hundreds of dollars per month going down. So they're pretty much down now.
Anybody? Any comments from the public? Good or bad? Or?
I had a comment that a light that was taken down was now very much missed. and I talked to Justin about it, and I don't know what the resolution was, but he said he was gonna look into it and talk to the neighbors, take a survey, and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And Chuck, same thing?
Same thing, yeah.
Anybody
People
else?
saying it's dark in the middle of my block now, you know, where there used to be one in the middle of the block and
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah.
We did get, I guess, several of those comments similar to what Paul was talking about, the one on Wisconsin Street. And when people have called me, you know, we've looked into it, and I guess with the whole process, you know, we updated that policy. It went from being a paragraph to about 2 pages. So now there is a formal process of when somebody requests us to look into it, we actually follow through and we do that. So we go out there and measure and, you know, check with the police department on what they're seeing for crime. We do pull the neighbors and then we make a judgment. Based on what we've seen so far, most of them have stayed out. I think there's a couple of them where I said, we'll keep them. I don't know exactly where those are, but anyways, the process was set up for that, to allow the public to voice their concerns, and if it was a reasonable request, they stayed or they went back up. So, but with WPS being as busy as they were, you know, putting them back up can, you know, it takes time.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Justin? Go
Hey,
ahead.
one other thing, I forgot to mention this to you when I saw you this morning, but you should have the construction company on Lake Street shut their equipment off at night when they go home, so. There was one left running that I guess the police department had to go have them turn it off like at 9:30 at night, and there was nobody there, so.
Is it like a diesel engine or something?
Yeah, it was a backhoe right outside a residence.
Oh, no.
So,
Oh, no.
you should maybe mention that to them when they go home, they should turn the equipment off.
Well, it would have turned off sooner or later.
Well, Friday night, it might have made it most of the way to Monday.
Wow.
Somebody would have been on it.
That's what I just thought.
You right? Okay, anybody else? Let's go to Parks and Rec. Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Justin mentioned the Emerald Ash Board. We'll be working with Russ and Justin on that and taking care of some things with there. Russ and I will meet, actually it was supposed to be this week, but time flies, so this week or next week we'll take a look at all the parks and how that may affect us. We had Fallarama September 16th, this last Saturday. That's the Friends of Waupaca Parks annual fundraiser. We thank all of our sponsors who helped make that happen. We had a successful day. We're thinking about possibly maybe ending it at 2 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. next year, as typically the last 4 years we've had slower crowds from that 1:30 to 4 p.m. time slot. But it was really, really busy from 10 to 1:30, so we were happy with that. Beautiful day for it. Programs, you can see in Andrew's report all of our programs we have going on. Our larger ones, flag football, volleyball, but we also have some kids chess programs. We also have an eco park program that we're working with a student or a former student from UW Stevens Point, and we got 23 participants in that, which we're very happy about for a first-time program and able to use that shelter out there. We will be bringing that education center to Park Board as far as uses for that. We do have an opportunity to it's our only enclosed shelter. It's insulated. We have an opportunity to use that a little differently in the colder months. So you guys will be hearing about that sometime shortly. We did have a vandalism issue end of August. Last week of August, we had probably, it seemed like every other day there for about a week and a half. We were having vandalism issues, specifically at Lower South Park. Worked with the police department. They were very, very good in helping us work through that. Also talking with Josh Werner now about security cameras, possibly game cameras, so we can be mobile in where we can address those issues. Working on our budget like every other department. Continue to do that and get it. Kathy, we'll have it to you by Friday. Don't worry. You look busy over there working on it now. Maybe you didn't even hear me. Senior Center reaccreditation, as you guys heard probably like almost a year ago now, or 6-9 months ago, that they got reaccredited. The reaccreditation is actually happening on October 5th in Sturgeon Bay, so that's coming up. Sarah and her staff deserve a lot of credit for that. That's not an easy process. Sheldon, our cemetery crew person, was gone for a week. He was called down for Hurricane Irma with the National Guards. So Josh had a little bit of overtime with some burials this past weekend. Softball, baseball, and the Friends of Waupaca Parks group are all user groups or fundraising groups that are looking to do some projects in the near future. We've been having those conversations specifically at Swan Park, and then the Friends of Waupaca Parks are looking to determine where to use some funds within the park. So we're excited to be having those conversations. And the last thing I want to mention is that we have a public input meeting on October 12th, I believe it is, for Rotary Riverview Park. That will be our third meeting in the planning process. It won't be a committee meeting. Like I said, it'll be that public input. We're planning to have it here in library, in the library meeting room at 5:30 on that night. So I will confirm with you, Peg, on that, but you will see more on that. That is all I have.
Great. Scott?
Regarding Emerald Ash Borer, are we just looking at our parks, or are we driving around kind of looking at people's property and their trees, or how is that working? Like roadside trees or something?
I should have mentioned we started the dead tree survey, so you're on the list.
I know. I got an elm tree. Last year was a pine. I don't know. I think they're planting emerald ash borers.
As far as the public goes, we're just going to try and raise awareness and do the education and pretty much leave it up to them.
All right.
And like I said, our trees on the street side, we'll be a little more aggressive with it. You know, if there's too crowded, looks a little weak, whatever, if there's any kind of reason the wind's not blowing right, we'll just take it down, you know, just to be proactive on that.
All right. All right.
Great. Any other questions for Aaron that Justin answers? Yeah. Anybody else? All right, let's go to the police department. Sergeant Helgeson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Police Commission met with the chief on its regularly scheduled meeting on September 12th. Discussion was held on the COPS grant, which is the grant that Chief Hozell is working with to try to get that extra position. He was made aware that there was some additional consideration would be given if he did a certification for illegal immigration cooperation, and that's attached in your packet. We'll have some information whether we get the grant by September 30th, 2017. There was also some general discussion on the capital funding, which involved purchasing of 2 new squad cars and replacing squads every 4 years. The purpose is to save the city money in maintenance as well as resale value each year. There was general discussion on the Celebrate software. It's a phone software that we use to download phones during our investigations. Currently, if we take a phone for evidence, we have to take them to either New London or the county to have them downloaded. It's an expensive software, but we do use it quite often nowadays. We also provided the commission our Narcan policy. Officers have currently been trained in Narcan, the use of Narcan, and we're all carrying the product now, Narcan. So that's kind of a big step. We did get that after the brat fry and everything, so that was good. Also, the Department of Justice conducted a routine audit of our time system. That we're required every 3 years to complete some paperwork involving that. We were found to be in compliance with the rules and regulations of the time system. We're also testing 2 body cameras through the Taser Corporation. It's a 30-day trial period, and officers are going to give us some input. We're having some problems with our current body cameras, and we're considering maybe changing, depending on what they say. Then there was discussion on the overtime budget. The commission was advised the department would be receiving checks from the federal government for approximately $15,000 for it was OWI grant money in November and December of 2016. So we should be getting that pretty soon. Otherwise, that's about it.
Great. Any questions for the sergeant tonight? Thank you. Appreciate you stepping in tonight. Mr. IT. Josh?
Okay, on the IT side of things, we've been having issues with certain incoming and outgoing calls on our main phone system, and that was Charter blaming our phone system vendor saying it's not our problem, and finally got to someone at Charter who didn't want to give up working on this problem until he found a resolution. It turned out to be an issue with Charter, so I think we're been about a week and a half, and no more issues with certain incoming and outgoing calls. On the phone side of things, still working with AT&T, trying to get into a new contract for our regular landlines. We fell off contract with no notification from them, and that meant our pricing went way up. Their proposed new contract to us would have more than doubled our cost per line. So that led to an exercise where we identified a couple phone lines that we could combine or weren't really needed anymore, got rid of a few. And I've been pursuing with them state contract pricing, and I don't know why we wouldn't be eligible, but they're checking right now if we're eligible for that, and that would actually keep our pricing about the same as what it was on the old contract. Until we get a new phone system for our 3 main buildings and until Public Works combine into a single facility, I don't have too many options to switch phone vendors or do anything significant at this time. So we're kind of stuck with them for a little while, but hopefully it's been over a month and they still can't give us a contract to sign, so hopefully soon we'll get there. Community media, we're taping our next Waupaca Local Live program Thursday night. Starts just before 7 o'clock in the room behind you. We've got Grayling Pingle coming in from the Clintonville area, one-man band. He performed at the summer block party, so if anyone wants to see what the program's all about, stop by. Waupaca Online, update on the grant project. We are working through lease agreements right now. We met with the county, I think we more kind of nitpicked the agreement they had, got some questions answered and clarified, and did a little negotiation on the lease payments, and just got something back from them this evening, and you'll be seeing that at our first October meeting to approve. Henry and I are meeting with Waupaca on Thursday to talk about renewing our lease for water tower space because that's up for renewal in 2018. And I'll be reaching out to the town of Bear Creek pretty soon to continue discussion on possibly locating a tower on town property as part of this project. So as we get these next couple leases figured out and finalized, we're going to start work right away and see what we can get done before winter. And then finally, I'm looking to add a new part-time staffer to help out kind of in all areas. I've got some IT projects coming out, a little bit of help in community media, and more significant Waupaca Online, and having a hard time finding people, so if anyone knows anyone that's into technology looking for some part-time help, send them my way.
All right. Josh, thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, let's go to Henry.
Mayor, thanks. My report is on page 73. Just 2 quick things. Continuing to work on the first responders initiative to try to get that group up and running. They are having a meeting next Tuesday with representatives of our towns, and their operational area would take in City of Waupaca and Town of Waupaca, and they're going to present a budget, and the hope is that the towns and the municipalities will kick in to fund a portion of their budget to get them going. We think it'll be a real nice compliment, and there seems to be some energy in terms of their part. There's about 10 individuals at this point wanting to organize their own group and have their own first responders group. So there would be a budget request I'm anticipating for the council to consider from them. Again, just to put in perspective, their overall budget's about $20,000, so the request to the city wouldn't be extremely large. Finally, taxi, I've been working with Kathy. The financials are not looking good there. We've been absorbing minimal, diminished state subsidies. And so we're embarking on a couple things to get this righted. One is looking at a general fare increase that you'll be considering. Going to the vet's home because we've looked a little bit closer at the service that we're providing them, and I think we can make the case that their agreement with us could increase slightly. And again, it's not a significant increase, but every couple $1,000s helps us out. And then finally, we're talking with the county in hopes that they might see the benefit to their constituents in Health and Human Services to maybe provide a appropriation to help. And again, that's just a couple $1,000s just to help meet the financial requirements of the system. And then finally, there's a change in the application process for operation of grants. If you remember, I always came to you about this time of year for an application that was due October 15th. They've pushed that back to December 15th. And we think a little bit of that just happens to be the state or the federal FTA, Federal Transportation Administration, has not kind of got a budget yet. So we think that's the main reason. So that's it. Thank you.
Henry, thank you. Any questions or comments for Henry? All right, let's then move on. Where are we moving on to?
Tower lease, Midway table.
Okay, yeah, 9D has been asked to be removed at this time, so I'm assuming we're gonna, this is dealing with the tower lease agreement, and I'm assuming, Josh, you're gonna be bringing this forward at a later date?
Yeah, I just got it back from them about 2 hours before the meeting and haven't had time. I thought we'd have it a little sooner, so we'll just push that to the next meeting.
Okay. Next then, we have a resolution number 1391, which Brennan is working on.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item's on page 157. What is in front of you this evening is basically a follow-up action that's required for the reconstruction of McDonald's on Western Avenue and Fulton Street. The Plan Commission did approve a new site plan and renovate, or actually reconstruction of that facility, which moves the building closer to the roadway, creates better street frontage. However, as part of that development, through the process, and actually we've been working on this for a couple of years, when the CSM was done many years ago, I think back in 1999, the state many times would put on what's called Trans 233, which would be setback requirements along all state trunk highways. That has actually, those requirements have been rescinded. However, this is a follow-up action this evening to actually officially rescind those setbacks that are identified within the packet that was provided to you. Specifically, if you look at page 165 in red, it identifies the 300-foot vision setback line along with the 110-foot setback line off of Fulton Street. And then at one point there was a 63-foot setback from the city along Western Avenue. The setback along that type of road is 25. So this instrument is rescinding all those setbacks at this time, which will permit McDonald's to reconstruct here very shortly, as actually the engineering plans have been approved. So we should see reconstruction shortly. This is a typical instrument that was prepared by the Wisconsin DOT for approval by the Common Council this evening.
All right. Be looking for a motion then to approve resolution number 1391.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Keelan, that we approve resolution number 1391 as it concerns the rescinding of some locations for site and so on the McDonald's property. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Chuck Whitman.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
And Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
All right, thank you, Brenna.
Thank you.
Next, let's move on to letter F, and this has got Henry's name on it.
Yes, if I could direct your attention to page 168. We have a fraud policy, fraud detection and investigation policy was put in place in the summer of 2001. And this year when we were doing our annual review of code of ethics and the fraud policy with employees, kind of came up that maybe we should consider amending the policy slightly, and it really just involves, and principal change involves who to report to when you have cases within the police department and the library with their statutory makeup. So basically, within the police department, you would report to the police chief and the chair of the Police and Fire Commission. If it involves the chief, it goes to the mayor and the chair of the Police and Fire Commission. If it's within the library, you report it to the library director and the chair of the library board. And then if it's the library director, to the mayor and chair of the library board. The only other change, when this policy was passed, we had a finance committee and it called out involving that chairman, and we've replaced that with the council president. So it's just basically an administrative change. It doesn't change the intent or the purpose of this policy. It's to give guidelines in identifying and following up on any kind of reports of fraud within.
Okay, any questions on that? It is a policy, so different than an ordinance or a resolution. It's just a policy that we can change with just a simple majority vote, and that's why it's in front of you tonight. So, anybody would like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Hagan, second by Dave Peterson, that we update the fraud assessment and investigation policy. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right, Henry, again, license report number 1383.
Yes, this is a quick trip request for a change of agent only. And this is just a kind of routine matter, but council needs to review it and vote on it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hackett, second by Keelan, that we approve of the change of agent, and this is license report number 1383 at the Quick Trip. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, you have, as always, we have the license report number 1384, which is the operators or bartenders license. You have a number of names on here. Obviously, if you approve this, it's all pending background checks and payments of any fines owed to the city. Again, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
So move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Fair, that we approve license report number 1384. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right, we're to issues, projects, discussions. We do have one tonight. This is Main Street and City Hall Square project design updates and a discussion of project design alternatives. Brennan is leading it from a staff standpoint, but we also have Randy Sanford from SEH Engineering Services with us here tonight too. So Brennan, you want to just set it up for us?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As part of the ongoing process for the redesign and reconstruction of Main Street, along with the City Hall Square project that is currently in conceptual and design form and looking to hopefully be bid next year, there is an internal steering committee that meets with the consultants on a month-by-month basis. Representatives of RDG Planning and Design, along with representatives from SEH, are here monthly to talk to staff about the project, give us an update, work through some critical design criteria that we need to work through. We felt that it would be good to for this to be a transparent process and keep the board up to date as well on where we are. So you will most likely be seeing Randy probably every other month here, just kind of giving a brief update to where we are with the process for Main Street and City Hall Square. They are both, SEH is contracted for both design projects. What we want to do this evening, as well as staff will be coming back forward here at the October 3rd meeting with some considerations that we need from the council and design directives that we need approval from the council to move forward, or some possible pilot ideas that we want to take a look at. So this evening is really just an overview of where the project is right now, some of the critical areas that we're at right now, and just kind of some of the timelines that we need to meet here. So with that, I will turn it over to Randy for the presentation.
Thank you, Brennan. And I'll try to keep this brief, and thank you for having me again tonight. So I know it's been a long night for you all. As Brennan said, we'll just go over a brief history of the project. We got 15 slides. It's going to be pretty quick, but there's been a lot of work that's being done here in the last 3 months, and we thought it'd be thoughtful to update the council. So do a little bit of background for those of you who are new to it. Go through the design, the parking, the process, the schedule, and how we're doing on grants and financing and costs. We're going to try to have this outline every couple of months for us, kind of that same outline, just to let you know where we're at. So again, just brief history. You guys have done that background planning work already, and Brennan's team of RDG and SEH completed this. Again, this is where the second phases of design are starting. So we're getting into the STP Urban Main Street project, City Square parking, off-street parking. Those were two of the kind of main projects to focus on the downtown plan that our staff has been working on. So getting right to the point of what we've been working on in the last 3 months, if you remember back in April, DOT did approve the angled parking requests that we put in to them. And since then, we've been working on some of the images and trying to get the geometrics correct. So so that this downtown becomes something that's pedestrian friendly, it's accommodates traffic where necessary, and it accommodates the businesses that you have downtown. Oops, go back here one more. Got a little head, sorry. So we're gonna start from I guess that's south to north, and Badger Street to Union Street. So and we're gonna just show you kind of issues and opportunities as our team has been looking at those. Down here you'll see what the Main Street downtown plan is, and the upper is kind of where we're at from a design standpoint moving forward. But generally what we've been looking at this block, Badger to Union, Badger Street, there are some truck turning movements that we've been trying to work through that DOT requires on this street, since it is an STP urban project. So you can see the bump outs down here don't match the bump outs currently the way that truck templates run through there. We are looking into some solutions to that. Staff and your staff are coming up with some radii that could be different and different solutions, but we have to work through the DOT process. Again, some of these things, we have some safety gathering areas that down here were hard space. Up here, potentially we're looking at maybe some softer space. So those are changes, and all of these has some cost implications. We're not ready to share that because we don't know, but we're working through some of those issues. And then again, we're doing that to make the safe area to walk and also to drive, and so people can feel comfortable walking downtown.
Got a question. What's a soft space? I know hard space would be curb, correct?
Yeah, right. Soft space might be paint. Right, paint maybe in this area instead of the hard curb. Yep.
Currently, right now, in the area that's being highlighted is where the movie theater is. Our ordinances require, the fire department would basically know there's basically disbursement or people safety area. So, the thought process during the RDG planning was, do we create that as a hard space? Maybe it's a nice little bump out for a gathering space, and the consideration by the council as we move forward is that something that we maybe want to implement in other places within the downtown area as well as a consideration.
Right, and moving on to Union and Fulton, again, we're looking at some of those same issues, pedestrian versus traffic. Right turn lane on Fulton. Right here, we're looking at a right turn lane onto Main Street. We're looking at, that issue, that turning radius. We're also considering reviewing or looking at a four-way stop controlled intersection there. Again, some of those opportunities are traffic calming, make it more pedestrian friendly, a little safer for the downtown. So we're starting to work through some of those. And again, you'll see the bump outs here look different as compared to bump outs down here. And relative to what's going on, again, it's some of the truck turning movements that we're trying to accommodate on this area downtown.
Randy?
Yes.
You said a four-way stop. What would be different than it exists now?
One of the there's two things with this intersection that we're looking at right now. The design plan that was when we went through the traffic study initially, and the design plan by RDG actually eliminated the right turn lane from Fulton Street onto Main Street. So that's one of the things that we're looking at right now. However, the challenge that we're having with some of that is the movement of trucks and what the DOT requires. Secondarily, there's been some discussion about the possibility of removing the stop and go lights and going to a four-way stop instead. Again, the four-way stop would actually be better for pedestrian safety. Actually, most likely would actually probably get traffic through there a little bit better. But again, those discussions, we're not making decisions tonight. Those are some of the things that we want to bring back forward to the council here on October 3rd. But again, there's some rhyme and reason why we're looking at a couple of those options as well.
Any other questions on that block in downtown?
You're talking about truck traffic. I thought, are we talking about large trucks? They're prohibited down there. I don't understand that terminology, I guess.
So the DOT, and Randy's got to help me with this a little bit. The DOT, because this is a state and federal funded project, requires a truck template, basically of a DB67 or a 67-foot or long tractor trailer coming through downtown. That probably is larger than what we would ever have in this area. And at least initially our consultants believe that we can probably go down to a DB50 for the truck turning movements. There has been some discussion of whether or not we even want to permit trucks on Main Street or regulate where they can or can't make those turning movements, and utilize some of the side streets or other traffic patterns to accommodate deliveries within the downtown area. If we were to change some of the traffic patterns, some of the design that you see on the bottom that was created by RDG would be more realistic to occur. But again, there are some changes that come with that. Mainly the two areas that we are having problems with right now with the turning movements are at Fulton onto Main and then Badger because of the wide sweeping turn that has to be made. That's also part of the old highways, national highway system, and we're looking at some options to possibly maybe relocate in that, which would provide us the opportunity to get more of the picture that's on the bottom, and which is more, again, I think the design intent all along to be more pedestrian friendly, safer for people to cross the road, instead of what you're kind of seeing right now on the upper picture, which is kind of what we have out there right now.
Right. Brendan, you covered that well. And the national truck route is something that's published by DOT. You can change that, and there are some hoops to jump through on that. We had success, but you have to prove that the alternate route would be. So we're starting to look into those, just starting to get into that as of last week. Fulton to Session streets, again, some of the same discussions. However, we're, currently there's a two-way movement here that's being, the issue is turning that to a one-way, which is eastbound only, so it would be traffic coming through this way, as this downtown plan is depicting. Why we're looking at that, a couple of things that, has large opportunity for traffic calming. Get the pedestrians to feel like walking across the street to different businesses in the downtown, so it's safer, enhances the downtown character, low volume traffic road, so it allows for a lot of that. So those are the opportunities that we're continuing to have success at as we move forward. Lastly, on the far north end, small changes or additions, I guess, to accommodate the Dane Hall is abandoning what was currently the North Main Street corridor here, and there is some right-of-way there, and we're considering abandoning that and then increasing or making that entrance there to the Dane Hall better and more accessible to Main Street. Some other things we're considering there, that is currently a two-way stop. Again, we're considering a four-way stop there, just depending on how some of that interacts with the drivers. Is that going to affect traffic calming? Certainly could. Has some areas that we're trying to look at and make some good judgments with staff. The opportunities, again, is traffic calming. You have a gateway to both ends here, so the four-way stop could make some sense. There's not a lot of traffic there, but there's heavy industrial use out there, so we'd have to consider that. There is some redevelopment opportunities in this block, and we're considering widening the sidewalks to help some of those redevelopment opportunities and get this to be a walkable, more safe, enhanced downtown. So those are some opportunities, some issues that we're looking at within the corridor from south to north. Parking has always been the number one challenge in this downtown plan. So as part of this project, you guys have hired SH RDG to continue to look at off-street parking, city square parking lot. Recently, within the last couple of weeks, staff and RDG have gone through some concepts. This happens to be a one-way parking area, which is concept number one. There is also a feel of a two-way entrance, more what you have to help circulation in here. Still, the entrance is still very much what you have now. And I think just with some staff review of last week, there was consensus that this is more of the preferred alternative. However, we're still just getting into that process right now. With those two concepts that we've looked at with staff, Main Street had 140 parking stalls, and then during that acceptance of standards process that I said just got approved in April by DOT, that said we would have 110 parking stalls. So we're trying to maintain at least that minimum standard. The current design with the traffic impacts from the truck turning movement has limited some of those spaces. So again, that's why some of these alternatives we're starting to look at. But the current design is expected to have between 100 and 110 on Main Street. Your city center off-street parking project, approximately 50 parking stalls now. The current design, as you saw with that two-way, between 80 to 90, is still in conceptual phase, but that adds 30 to 40 parking stalls. So the loss of 30 to 40, you're adding 30 to 40, so you have a similar count. That's what we're hopeful to get. We're expecting to possibly have just a bit more we'd like, but those remain to be seen as we're just still in the preliminary design phases. So just starting to wrap this up, again, we are in an STP urban process with DOT. They are funding a number of things in this project. So you have a municipal agreement. You all know that. This is where the large items that our design team, your staff, need to get through in the next 2 years. We're currently just coming into this 30% conceptual design phase, which is trying to finish up the geometrics. And then from that, then some of these reports that DOT requires from a historical Section 106, the environmental report is due to them February 2018, which I hate to say is right around the corner. Pavement design reports will follow. Then we're supposed to be to a 60% design in July of 2019. Now that may seem far off, but there will be a lot of decisions, a lot of items to consider over the next year to get to that point. Again, that timing, I think you've seen this before. We're in that 30% phase here. We're looking at, as it goes into 2018, there is some other funding mechanisms that we're keeping our eyes on. And as the federal government gets to their budgeting, we'll be looking at whether those are still in play. We believe they are, maybe not in their current state, but there is some CDBG money that the state has that we're planning to apply for as well. So this is the timeline for the Main Street construction, timeline for the City Square parking lot. We're here. Bidding is anticipated, and I actually didn't update this for this meeting, but our bidding is scheduled to happen sometime in January of 2018 so that we can get some good pricing for early spring to summer construction. Keeping in mind that we know Strawberry Fest is kind of in those areas, so that'll be important to work around as we get into final design. Again, this will be a part of that overall discussion every other month. You've seen this slide from last a couple of months ago. This has not changed. We're not far enough along in the process to change the numbers, but we are still focusing on and holding to a budget of $4.8 million for construction on Main Street. So that's what you've engaged with us, and we're trying to hold our designs to that. Again, with the City Square parking lot, $520,000. All that was approved by you going forward. This will be one of those sheets that do get updated with some live numbers as we get further along. We're just not there yet. Again, funding of this is a lot of it is being funded by you, some by the state, and we're hopeful that we can get some additional grant fundings through the state CDBG program. So currently I can say we are on budget. And that's the update that we have for you today. I can try to answer any questions, and Brendan can as well.
Thank you, Randy. I think, again, and you mentioned this a couple times, I think it's important to understand why it was put under this section. This was just for FYI purposes only. Talked about a four-way stop instead of stoplights on Main Street and Fulton Street. That's still to be discussed, obviously. So, let's make sure we understand that that's not something that we plan on doing tomorrow. But I think it's good to get updated on what's going on and find out what the next process is. And obviously our next process is to improve the parking, which means the backside of this building and the parking there and how that flow will work for us. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Brennan?
Again, and just to back off, or to back up the comment by the mayors, again, we will be coming back forward here at the next council meeting with a couple recommendations and or pilot studies that the consultants recommended for us to try as part of this. Again, the four-way stop is one scenario that we're looking at. The other options are looking at those right turn movements and what we may or may not want to do. So again, we'll be bringing that back as for some consideration by the council at the next meeting. But
yeah, actually, too, and just one other comment on this. If you get the opportunity, to go to communities that are similar to ours, that are heavy on tourism in the summer or the fall, as we are, too, check it out and see what the difference is as far as stoplights and stop signs. And I think you'll find that maybe you might change your mind on stoplights being better than stop signs, but you have to make that decision on your own, because I was skeptical when I heard about it the first time too, until I saw how it works in other communities. And I can give you a list of communities if you ever want to see them that I've been through recently, and watch for that. Any other comments or questions? Obviously, that's not the only thing I got out of that meeting was the stop signs.
no, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Justin as well. We're certainly willing to talk to you guys, give you guys, if there's more details you're looking at prior to the next meeting, certainly reach out to one of us.
Great. Anything else from council for the good of the meeting? Henry, next meeting, or Kathy, next meeting? Personnel?
Yes, on the budget.
Okay, so personnel discussion on the budget at the next meeting, and that will be held after the council meeting's over with. Okay, communications, recommendations of the mayor. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate what we went through tonight, and I think we have shown how due process works and how things can work out properly, hopefully, in this process. So I hope that worked. And one other thing, on a side note, the Brewers are ahead 1-0, top of the 7th. We need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Keela and second by Hagan that we adjourn to our next regular scheduled meeting, which is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017, subject to call. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion carried. We are adjourned at 8:19 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for attending and watching our meeting on TV.